The field is the therapy. You ever notice that the only place most men feel completely free to cry is at a game? Not at a funeral, not at the hospital, not in the marriage counselor's office, but at a game. And we act like that is a coincidence. My name is Dr. Philip Montgomery. I'm a licensed clinician, a behavior analyst, and I have been in rooms with men long enough to know that sports is not just entertainment. For millions of men, it is the closest thing to therapy that they've ever had. And today on Behavior 360, we're going to talk about why. Think back to the first time somebody handed you a ball, or sat you in front of a game, or took you to the stadium. For most of us, that was not just recreation, that was initiation. Sports is one of the first languages boys are given to speak to each other with freedom. Before we had the vocabulary for feelings, before we had permission to be soft, before anyone told us it was okay to need something, we had the game. And in the game, you could feel everything: the rush of winning, the devastation of losing, the brotherhood of being on the same side as somebody, the sting of being cut from the team. Boys learn emotional language range through sports before anyone ever teaches them to name it. Here is what the research tells us: male peer bonding historically happens through activity, side by side, not face to face. Men do not typically bond by sitting across from each other, talking about their feelings. They bond by going through something together: the locker room, the pickup game, the fantasy league draft at somebody's house until 2 in the morning. That is male architecture, and sports builds it. Now, here is the clinical question I want to sit with. If sports is the classroom where men learn to connect, grieve, celebrate, compete, and belong, what happens to the men who never had access to that classroom? And what happens to the men who had it and then lost it? Because I watch grown men, 35, 45, 55 years of age, still organizing their entire emotional life around a team. And I do not say this dismissively. I say this as a clinician who wants to understand what that team is actually doing for that man. Now, here's where it gets complicated, because sports gives men something powerful and something dangerous at the same time. It gives them a scoreboard. And for a lot of men, the scoreboard is the first honest feedback they ever got. Your coach could not play favorites with the clock. The field did not care about your family background. Either you made the shot or you didn't make it. Either the team won or they didn't win. The scoreboard never lied to you. In a world where men are often dismissed or their given empathy is not validated, that kind of clarity is intoxicating. But here's the dangerous part, and I need you to really hear this. When your self-worth gets fused with performance, when who you are becomes inseparable from how you do, you do not have an identity, you have a record, and records change. The athlete who ties his entire sense of value to his performance does not judge struggle when he gets injured. He goes into psychological freefall because the thing he built his selfhood on just got taken away. And it is not just athletes. It is the man who crushed it at work for 20 years and then got laid off. The man who was greatest father on the block, and now his kids are grown and they do not need him the same way. The man who was the strongest in the gym, and now his body is arguing with him over that. We are not just talking about sports, we're talking about any man who learned to measure his worth by his output. And if you grew up playing or watching your father live and die by his team, there is a good chance the scoreboard is still running the background of your life right now, today. And when the score is not where you want it to be, it does not feel like a setback. It feels like a verdict on who you are as a man. That is not a performance problem. That is a values problem. And that is where we do on this show our best work. I want to shift gears for a moment because I do not want this to just be about the dangers. Because sports has given men something real, something that therapy honestly can struggle to replicate. Sports is one of the few arenas where men get to discover who they actually are under pressure, not who they perform to be, not who their families need them to be, who they actually are when the game is on the line. The clock is winding down, and the cost is something great. I have watched men discover their courage on a field, not because they were fearless, but because they were terrified and they went away and they found out that they could do it. I have watched men discover their capacity for grace in losing, that it is not a small thing knowing how to lose without being destroyed, that it is emotional architecture most therapy clients spend years trying to build. I have watched men discover brotherhood, real brotherhood, through sports. The kind where somebody pushes you because they believe you have more in you. The kind where you carry a teammate through a fourth quarter because that is just what you're supposed to do. That is not just sport, that is formation. Because here's the other side of this. For every man who discovered resilience in sport, there is a man who discovered that his worth is conditional, who learned that love from his father only came when he performed well, who learned that the team will replace you the second you are no longer useful. Sports does not just have a single story, it reflects whatever relationships and messages surround it. A father who coached his son with patience and honesty. That son likely learned something about grace under pressure that he carries into every hard meeting, every hard conversation, every hard session of life. A father who screamed at the referee, who shamed his son after losses, who made football feel like survival. That son likely learned something too. He learned that love has to be earned and that making a mistake in front of the people who matter is the most dangerous thing in the world. Which story is yours? I want to tell you about a man, and I am not using his name or his details. This is a composite, but I want to tell you about a man who I have seen in one form or another in almost every city in this country. He gets bad news at work, a real gut punch, the kind of thing that shakes his sense of security, his sense of purpose, his sense of himself, and someone has to help him pull it together. He does not call his wife, he does not call his best friend. He puts on the game. And his wife, who loves him and is watching this, she thinks he does not care. She thinks he is checked out. She thinks he is choosing ESPN over their relationship. But here's what I know as a clinician. He is not escaping, he is processing. The game is giving him something his nervous system desperately needs in that moment: predictable rules, clear stakes, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Something that someone wins and someone loses in a way that does not involve him personally. He is metabolizing his pain at a safe distance by watching somebody else navigate high stakes pressure. It is this healthiest strategy. No, but is not nothing. And understanding what it is rather than just labeling it avoidance is what allows us to actually help that man. Because if we want him to continue toward us, we have to first respect what brought him to the couch. He did not need the game because he did not care. He needed the game because nobody ever taught him another way to survive a hard day. And what we want, what Behavior 360 is about, is giving men a second language, not replacing the game, adding to it. Because the same man who watches for hours of film to understand why his team lost a playoff game, that man has the capacity for extraordinary self-reflection. We just need to invite him to turn that lens on himself. So let me bring this home. Every man listening to this right now has a relationship with sport. Some of you played, some of you watched, some of you walked away from it, and you are not sure what you left behind. Some of you are raising sons and daughters right now, and you're making decisions, consciously or not, about what you are going to attach to how they perform. Here is what I want to leave you with. In acceptance and commitment therapy, which is the framework I work from clinically, we talk about the difference between the game you are playing and the rules you are playing by. A lot of men are still playing by the rules of a game that ended 20 years ago. The rules that said worth equals output, that strength means silence, that you only deserve to belong if you are useful. Those rules made sense once. Maybe they even kept you alive once, but they are costing you now. The man you are becoming does not need to win to belong. He needs to know who he is when the scoreboard is blank. I am a man of faith, and I believe that identity rooted in performance is always one bad season away from collapse. But identity rooted in something deeper, in calling, in values, in the kind of man God designed you to be, that holds. That is the work. That is what this show is. Not therapy from a distance, a conversation between men who are willing to be honest about what the game has cost us and what it has given us. Because the field is not the enemy. The silence around it is. Again, this is Behavior 360, and I am Dr. Philip Montgomery. And the best game you will ever play is the one happening inside you. Until the next time, stay well.